See, I've learned a lot about what it takes to make this all happen, and I know about 2% of it, and I know that you're running software too.
Yeah, I'm running vMix, and it's a switcher software, what Mike's talking about. And as long as my remote works here, we'll give this another shot. There we go. Now this is a demo piece that I did for SWAT last year, and I used the airbrush and acrylic paints on it, and it is very similar to what we're going to do tonight. Let me move some things here and I'll show you that piece live. I'm trying to show you 3 different things tonight, and I thought I was organized before we started. Okay, so this piece here, now I'm world renowned and known for breaking my pieces and dropping them. So this is the piece that the first piece that I decided I wanted to airbrush and use the sandblaster at the same time. So let me get back over here to there we go. And that's what we're going to do here in a little bit, is I'm going to show you how I do that. Now, bleaching wood. A lot of you have seen Betty Scarpino's work. She does a lot of bleaching. A lot of folks do. But she's got her own recipe for a bleach. Now, I have a resource sheet that I'll send Mike later tonight where you can pick up some of the products that I use. And on this one, I actually use a commercial product made by Clean Strip. Now, they quit making that, but Daly's Wood Finishes has started making it now. So that's not an issue. Metallic patinas, I know a lot of you have probably played with those. I've done quite a little bit with them. They're a lot of fun, a lot of different companies involved in that. Here's another example of some milk paint. And it's one that I did last summer. You remember when Betsy Ross hit the news, I kind of decided that I was a little bit patriotic. So I decided that's what I wanted to do, was make Betsy Ross famous again, I guess. Well, guys, always when you want something to work, right? I've not had this issue before, I promise. Okay, well, while I've got this up here, I'll show you the acrylic acetate, or iron acetate. This is, a lot of you probably have used it on flat work. Well, I'm just not getting the feed out. You lost me again, no doubt.
Yeah, we can see a piece of oak.
That's what froze?
Yep.
We'll try this instance of vMix one more time. If it doesn't work, I have a second. Have I lost you all, or are you still there?
We are still here.
Still here.
We're here. There is Joe. I'm here.
Hey, Joe. That's my doctor, guys.
No, it's not.
Okay, now you see bleaching wood.
I do.
All right. Let me see if we can get back up to speed here. What I was telling you about this is the use of milk paint and sandblasting. And this is one of the demos I've done, or sandblastings, the demo that I did down in SWAT last year. And I've done it several times for several different clubs now and not frozen up one time. Now, the iron acetate, I started to say earlier, a lot of you have probably used iron acetate on flat work. And the reason why there's not a picture is because most people think that that's ebonizing. Here's the time-lapse video that I did earlier this morning. This actually took about 30 minutes from the time I painted it on to the time it dried. And for those of you that maybe don't know, iron acetate is white vinegar. You can use any kind of vinegar. I actually just used household vinegar for mine, and steel wool. And you want to make sure that the steel wool doesn't have any oil on it. So you're better off to use something like a Liberon or Brewax, those particular brands don't have oil in them. And that way it won't transfer the oil to the wood. You can see it's really starting to dry off there. When I first put it on, it looked like it was going to be really black. And what happens is over time, it gets really a lot more gray. And let me see if I can go to this camera here where I can show you. I've lost a camera, but I can show you here. This is the outside of that. That's the natural oak there. And this is, you may not be able to see the texture very well here under that camera, but that's sandblasted oak, and even walnut blasts really well. Honey locust, ash, hackberry, a lot of those woods are really good for sandblasting. But what I did here, and I've got another one that's finished. This is white oak as well. This one's blasted. And what I was going for here was I was trying to make it look like old barnwood. And you saw the background behind me. The wall behind me is red oak. And I blasted the outside and treated it with that iron acetate. And it actually kind of bled through. It's, you know, oak's very porous. So I just went ahead and coated the inside. And it really has kind of caught the attention, specifically my daughters-in-law. They're kind of a tough crowd. So that's one little technique that I've played with that I really like. And let me go back here and we'll talk about airbrushes. Now, I'm going to see if I can add an input here on the fly. Whoops. Boy. Well, folks, I'm sorry. I don't know. This has not happened to me before. And here it is, your regular meeting, a demo, and your demonstrator has fallen on you. Let me try to restart one more time. If I can get nothing more than cameras up, then I'll show you airbrushing for sure. Usually when you run into an issue in one of these meetings, it's simply a camera issue or a microphone issue. Okay, I'm still with you. Now I'm going to see if I can add an input. Maybe it'll solve the problem. Is that Sean laughing at me? No, that one's not going to work.
No, I would never laugh at you, Larry. Never.
Well, I would. Well, here we go now. Okay, let me cut to the overhead. Now, is there feedback? The equipment that I was talking about for airbrushing is really pretty simple. You don't have to spend a fortune on product. Now, I'm going to turn the volume down. I'm getting feedback here.
We've got a grinding jig.
I've got slides for you where I can show you the different pieces of this. Now, you need, let me turn it around here so you can see it this way. You really need
on the,
4 items to do this. You need your regulator that connects to your air compressor. Then you need your water trap. And while all a water trap does is it keeps the moisture out of the brush itself, out of the media that you're shooting. Obviously, you don't want splatter or water to cause splatter in that way. And
So
then a
back on
simple
our grinding
airbrush.
jig.
This is a Iwata Neo airbrush.
Hey, Larry.
This airbrush I bought at Hobby Lobby. It was with a coupon somewhere around $40. I do have a slide where I can show you on Amazon. It's about 55, maybe 60.
Larry.
Can you?
Yes.
We can see only an image of grinding there.
Yeah, Larry. All we have is when you're setting your 2 inches on your VARI-GRIND. We don't have you live like we did a while ago.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, let me see if I can fix that.
Okay, there's your platter with the
Yeah.
stars. I don't know if that's a platter or a bowl. That'd be a plol.
It's a bladder.
It's a bladder.
Okay, now we have color bars, right?
Yeah, okay. They're getting there.
Okay.
And there we have
Nice
it set up.
airbrush, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
You start again, that'd be good.
Yeah. Okay,
Iron
so
acetate.
let me go ahead and show you the slides here for the airbrush.
Iron acetate.
Now, this is what I was telling you is this is a pretty simple airbrush. It's $60 on Amazon. You can shop it a little bit. I believe Michael's carries it still. I don't know whether Hobby Lobby does or not.
Currently at 70.
Then the regulator you can pick up at Lowe's, a simple regulator. And then your water trap, like I was saying, is you really need a water trap because that keeps the media from getting wet and splattering around. And so the reason why I show you that, other than the little couplers that you connect everything together with, the little brass there, you're into this for about $125, as opposed to buying one of the little air compressors that are made for airbrushing that start at 100 and go on way up higher than that. Now, there are brushes that cost a lot more money than this one, but this is just a basic, it's a good beginner brush. And I really don't do fine detail with my airbrush. This is all done with stenciling. And what we're going to do tonight is look at this platter that I've got, and we're going to cover it with black dye. And let me see if I can go to not that camera. There we go. Go to that camera and I can show you the actual brush itself. Now, there are a lot of different dyes out on the market. There's chestnut spirit stains. A lot of you have probably heard of that. There's artisan. A lot of you probably have seen that in Craft Supply's catalog. They, the walnut log, Jeff Hornung in St. Louis sells it as well. And one of the ones that I really like is this Phoebings. Get it so the light so you can see it better. Phoebings USMC Black. Now it's just a little more fluid. All three of these are alcohol based. You may be familiar with Trans-Tint. Trans-Tint is a concentrate that you can dilute either with water or alcohol. And it depends on the process, or not the process, the project that I'm doing, whether or not I want to use alcohol or water. If I want a little more work time, I'm going to use water because it doesn't wick off as quickly, obviously, as alcohol does. If I want to do something like this platter, I'm probably going to use alcohol because whenever you look in close at this, you can see that there's going to be a lot of texture in it and a lot of crevices, and I don't want it to run and drip as much as water might when I apply that. So what I'll probably do is in situations like this, you know, I'm going to spray on one color and then I'm going to go across the top of it with an acrylic brush and do a dry brush technique. So let me go ahead and set that up. I'm kind of out of order and discombobulated since my PowerPoint's not going to work for me as well as I'd hoped. But let me use the artisan, and I probably should go ahead and glove up. And you need to wear a mask, which I won't tonight just because it's hard to talk to you and use the mask at the same time. But if you don't wear a mask, you're going to be breathing in some color. And when you blow your nose, you're going to wonder where all that color came from. Whether it's a rainbow or black like this dye or green. I've done some Kelly green stuff. You really should wear a mask. And I would recommend one of the N95s like we're all talking about so much now. They're definitely better when it comes to taking care of your lungs than other masks. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead. Now the artisan has shellac in it. Most of the alcohol dyes have shellac in them. And I'm going to go ahead and Now I have put this dye on with the turning spinning, but on something that is this highly textured, I really kind of want to dial it in. You can probably see I've got a fan blowing the wrong direction, actually. It's blowing right at me. You can see I'm just really using it more as a paintbrush than I am a fine detail like you normally associate airbrushes with. You know, you think about t-shirts or, you know, something like that with the airbrush artist. Now, if I work on this side of it, shooting off the edge, I'll have a finer line when I get around to the edge. It doesn't compete like as if I were to shoot over here, because then I would risk more of that vapor, more of those droplets going around back. So I want to try to keep it going that direction. And it fills pretty quickly. And again, with the artisan, the Phoebings, the chestnut spirit stains, they've all got shellac in that alcohol. And it will help it set up quickly. The alcohol wicks off. The shellac will actually, if you use it on a piece that's not too heavily textured, you can varnish it a little bit with a piece of paper towel. Obviously, we don't want to use a cloth rag while we're on the lathe. Okay, I think I'm pretty well there. At least for a demonstration piece. Anybody see anything I'm missing? You can speak up, it's okay. Do I still have you with me?
Yes, yes, we see what you're doing.
Okay.
It looks like it does a pretty darn good job getting in those crevices.
Yeah, it does. And you notice I'm going at it from several different angles. I'm not just shooting one direction. I'm not just here. I'm up here, I'm down here, and all around it. And really what I'm going to do next, I just want to have a good base of color underneath it, because I'm going to come back with the dry brush on the medallion portion and on the rim. I'm probably going to leave the beads black. I might brush over a little bit. I think I've got a light staring me in the face from the other side, but I think I'm there. I'm going to shoot just a little bit more. A little bit here. A little bit on the edge there. Now, what you can do at that point, a lot of you are probably familiar with using your magic marker for the rim. There are some options out there, and this is one of them here, made by Chromacraft, where you can actually go ahead, and I'm not going to do it now, but you could actually turn the lathe on and ride that edge right on the outside if you needed a crisper line. Now, the way it's looking right now, I've got a pretty good line. I may come back after I do the dry brush and I may touch it up then. Now, let me see if I can get back to some slides here. If they don't work, then we'll move on and we'll punt. Okay. Now that's the different dyes I was telling you about. Let me back up just for a minute and talk a little bit about acrylics. Acrylics, I don't use a lot, but I do some. And I use them more for something that's going to maybe be a little more permanent. I don't want to say permanent, it's not the right word. I tend to really like the dyes. And what I do, let me touch on this first. I've got in the handout sheet for you guys, I've got a homemade mix for airbrush cleaner. And you definitely want to make sure that you keep your airbrush clean, and it's not terribly difficult to do that. The homemade mixture that a lot of people use is basically Windex, DNA, and a little bit of glycerin. And part of the reason why I like the dyes is because the brushes clean so much quicker and easier than acrylics. Maybe that's why I like it. I hadn't really discovered that about myself until right now. And you don't have to take the airbrush completely apart. Once you start seeing pretty clear alcohol, so you don't see much color, much pigment left in that, that's good enough. If I wanted to go to another color, I'm ready to go. Okay, so that's one of the easier ways of dealing with the airbrush itself. Now I'm going to go ahead and put it away, and I'm going to grab my dry brush and explain to you what that is. I use metallic paints quite a little bit for things like this. The heart bowl that I showed you, this is a silver metallic paint here. And a dry brush, for those of you that have never done it, some of you may have, is really a pretty easy technique. It amounts to using a brush and the dry brush part. Let's see if I can get back here and show you rather than just tell you. The dry brush technique is simply taking the acrylic paint, and this is Mylan's, I like it. This is Golden. Golden is a good brand. Golden sells a lot of other things, airbrush, acrylics. This is high flow airbrush medium. If you wanted to use an acrylic, I mentioned Chromacraft earlier. They do make good acrylics, and you'll notice that all of them have these easy dispenser lids. All you do is shake them up, pop them open, and use them. Now, for the dry brush, you want iridescent copper or silver. Somebody call it.
Copper.
Copper it is. Okay, now I'm just going to use a little bitty bit. And the principle behind a dry brush, and I don't know, some of you probably are painters and know this already. I had to become a wood turner to learn how to do this. I'm trying to get off everything I just put on the bristles. And then when I go to the wood, I'm just hitting the highlights. Let me see if I can move that camera up just a little bit. Maybe zoom it in just a little bit. And I'll work over here, how about? Now, you don't want to go real heavy to start with. You want to start off pretty easy. And you want to try to also go against the grain of that wood. Okay, I'm going to pick up a little more paint here, dry it off. You can see it builds. You don't want to, again, if you go too heavy, you'll get down in these crevices. See, I almost picked up, you can see right here, I almost picked up too much paint that time. But see how it builds? It's easier to put more on than it is to take it off. So that is, you have to be mindful of that. The first piece that I did, I was going really light, and I kept thinking, well, I'm probably going too light. So then I stepped it up, and boy howdy, I had way too much. But now you should be able to start to see. Let me see if I can give you some better light. You should start to see it coming to life about now. There we go.
Larry, any particular advice on the type of brush?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. That's part of the slides that I have for you that are not working. You want a pretty stiff brush. You don't want, and this is obviously just a chip brush, and I use them a lot. You can also buy artist grade brushes that are made for dry brushing. And like everything else that we do as wood turners, painters are in the same boat. You could spend a buku dollars just on a good dry brush. So I have found, and this is, you may not be able to tell from the camera, but this has been trimmed a little bit to get it down to where it's a little stiffer. And what that does is it won't get in the crevices quite as easy by doing that. Okay. Can you see it? It's really starting to get bright on my end. Can you see it on your end?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, let me get a little more paint here. It doesn't look, I've got a monitor here I'm looking at where I can see what you guys are seeing, unless it locks up again. It doesn't really look like it's showing a lot yet on the camera, but in person, it's really starting to pop. Now you see I'm kind of working that edge just a little bit around here. Again, I need to show you again the overhead. I'm just not using, I've got a little bit more on it there than I probably should have had. But you get to that point where you've got the grain here, you can work it this way, but as soon as you get here, you really need to work across the ribs. Get it back up here so you can see it a little bit better. It's like watching paint dry, isn't it? Okay, get here. There we go. It takes a little while with the brush when you first start with it to hold that paint well enough to continue to spread it. Okay. You can see on camera there where, now I kind of went with the grooves there, but it was lacking right in here. It's one of those things you just kind of have to experiment with. You really want your base color to kind of pop through. Now, I was talking about the beads. I don't want to cover them as heavily, but I want to give them a little bit. I'm going to add just a little bit more paint down here on my paper. You want to give them just a little bit of presence, but I also want to start working on that medallion in the middle. Let me see if that light, just a little bit more here, and then we'll move on.
Hey, Larry.
Yes, sir.
Question, is that ash?
Say again?
Is the wood ash?
Yes, this is. Ash does a great job of sandblasting, and I sandblasted the rim and the center. Well, I sandblasted pretty much all of it, but I focused here, and then remounted it and turned the beads.
How much actual time did you have sandblasting that after you started?
This particular piece, the backside of it is actually, I got a different texture on it. This piece probably took me, I would say 15 minutes probably. Maybe more, but I don't think so. Now, if I were to do the whole piece, you know, the whole inside where these beads are, then yeah, then it's going to take some serious time. And it really depends on a lot of factors, you know, how big a compressor you've got. I guess I don't need that anymore, do I? How big a compressor you've got, the size nozzle you use, and all kinds of other contributing factors to a good sandblast piece. That's just not showing up on the camera for you guys like it is me for some reason. There you can see a little bit of the color radiating out here.
Larry, was that piece green when you first turned it, or was it really like bone dry?
No, it was actually kiln dried timber. I bought it from Schaller Hardwoods, which is based out of Poplar Bluff, Missouri. And I've kind of built a little bit of a relationship with them over the years. Whenever I want to find platter material that's good and dry, I ask them to kind of vet or let me know what they have in stock. And this one was a board that was probably, it was at least a good 10-inch board, 2 inches thick. Okay, that gives you kind of an idea of how to dry brush. Okay, now this platter, again, I'll just show you the back of it just for fun. I'll probably get copper everywhere. How about I show you in a few minutes? On the back side, you see a different texture there. That's needle scaling. And that's one of my favorite processes too, is the needle scaler. But that gives you, the light's a little bit better on it there. That gives you kind of an idea of what you can do with a dry brush. Now you can do that with the reactive metal paints. You could dry brush it on lightly, and then you could hit it with the patina solution, and you'd really be kind of surprised by the outcome. I think it would be a gorgeous piece. Now let me switch gears real quick. Are any questions on this at this point?
Looks good.
Okay. Let me see if I can move on to a little bit of milk paint for you. And give you kind of an idea of how you can use milk paint. Okay. Now I use primarily old-fashioned milk paints, and there are a lot of milk paints out there. There's milkpaint.com, old-fashioned milk paint, and General Finishes sells what they consider a milk paint. It's got some acrylics in it, and in my mind that keeps it from being a true milk paint. Let me see if I can pull up here and give you kind of an idea. Now, mixing milk paints is a 1-to-1 ratio, and you're going to use 1 part water, 1 part milk paint. And if you want good smooth milk paint, you've really either got to stir and stir and stir with a swizzle stick, or you can use a little method that I kind of devised here. I had Donna Zills Banfeld, who's one of the turners, and if you've seen any of her work, she does beautiful work. She told me about this little idea of using a whisk. So you see the clumps in that. If you start stirring with a swizzle stick there, or a tongue, that's a little bitty tongue depressor, popsicle stick, it'll take you a while. And what I found when I first started using milk paint was I would stir, and then I would let it set for 5 or 10 minutes, and then I would stir some more, let it set for 5 or 10 minutes, and then I would stir some more. So what I've determined is there's a better way. You guessed her, Chester. Donna had told me about the little whisks, and she said, yeah, it's just a lot quicker. And I thought, boy, if 1 nail's good, 2 nails are better. And you'll see here, my Porter Cable egg beater does a great job of mixing that milk paint. If anything, it almost makes it frothy. And I don't know that frothy is good, but it definitely mixes it a lot quicker, a lot smoother. And it depends on the viscosity that you want. If you want a thicker paint or a thinner paint, and I've used both. And on this particular project, I'll show you here, the tool handle that I'm going to put this on, I'm going to put it on in 2 layers. And we'll finish mixing there. And then what I'm doing is I'm checking that viscosity. And it's just a little bit thick. So it's kind of a by gosh and by golly way of mixing paint. And you just kind of find that particular mix that you're looking for. whether it be, you know, if you want to put something on heavy, it works, but I prefer to put on 2 coats of thinner milk paint than 1 coat of thick. It just seems to bond better. It seems to finish out smoother, and you have fewer problems with it. Now, this is a piece of oak that I'm making a tool handle out of, and I sandblasted it, and I came across the top with this color, which is, I believe, royal blue is the name of it. This is actually a Sweet Pickens brand. Sasha, a nice lady that bought out old-fashioned milk paint, had old-fashioned milk paint making her colors that she wanted, custom colors, and she's been selling them for several years. And here in the last year, she bought out old-fashioned milk paint. This is navy blue, not the other one. This is a navy blue color. And this is the color that I used for my Stars and Stripe pieces. And she's got both old-fashioned milk paint and Sweet Pickens, and she offers in the Sweet Pickens line more of the current popular colors, something you might see people using on distressed furniture. Now, what you're seeing there is I'm making sure that I'm getting all of that paint inside of those crevices. Now, I don't have to be exact, but what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put my second layer on, and then I'm going to sand back. Let me go ahead and move forward a little bit. I know we're running shy on time. This one I purposely mixed just a little bit thinner, and I use the egg beater on it too. I've got on the resource sheet the information on where you can find these things. That I know will work. And it gets really smooth. Now, you always want to clean them off right at the end of your use. I reuse the same brush over and over and over again. Just like with that whisk, I'm making sure that I'm washing it off every time. Now, if you mix by hand, what I'm showing you here is a way to get the clumps out of the milk paint. Now, so if you've stirred and stirred and stirred, and you still have some clumps or some little pieces of debris, you can run it through that sieve, and it'll help you get rid of those little chunks of dry milk paint. I found since I started using the egg beater that it works a lot better. Now, I went across the top of this one. Like I said, it's a little bit thicker than ink, but not a lot. It's really pretty runny. And I went across the top with 2 coats on this. Okay. Now let me show you the end result on, let me grab this piece here and let me show you this. This is one of the tool handles that I turned and colored some time back. And what I was going for, I wanted it to look like a tool handle maybe that Grandpa had passed down. And this is ash that I blasted. A lot of you have probably seen Jimmy Clues do the demo where he burns the ash, brushes it back, and then adds color. Well, I thought if you can do that with fire, you can do it with a sandblaster as well. So I painted the base color black, or I'm sorry, the base color red. It's what old-fashioned milk paint calls a barn red. And then I topped it with black. And then the final process is to sand it down. Now I use a Scotch-Brite pad, either a green or the maroon, and you're just basically working back on this to bring forward the color underneath. And there's a couple of places here where you can kind of see the wood poking through. Kind of looks worn, and it's got just a real neat tactile feel whenever you hold that tool. Now, one of the other ones that I've done, and this is a combination of milk paint and acrylic paint. The white and the blue are both milk paint, and the red is actually an acrylic paint. I couldn't find anything in the milk paint line at the time that was bright enough. Since that time, I found with Sweet Pickens several shades of red and one that's just almost identical to that. So that's gives you a better idea. I started making these little inserts, kind of the whole slick idea. And then you've got an interchangeable handle and something that you can actually use and looks nice at the same time. I know I've been kind of scattered here with my presentation, and I apologize for it not working for us the way it normally would. Let me see here. There's Sweet Pickens. Again, I've got that in the resource sheet for you. And the artisan dies I pick up, like I said, from the walnut log out of St. Louis. You can also get them from Craft Supplies USA. And we're running short on time. I had a lot more to share with you, but I feel like I'm burning too much time here with the errors. Questions at any point? No questions?
It looks very good.
Oh,
Larry, I got a question for you in regards to the milk paint. Is there something you do after the milk paint's applied to kind of secure it to the wood and keep it from just flaking off?
Yes. If you don't put a finish on milk paint, it will spot. And whether it's water, oil, or whatever, anything will spot this up. And that's whether it's, let me see, I've got another, this was one I really wanted to show you. My wife's first turning ever. I coaxed her and talked her into it finally. And I showed her basically the basic cuts. She used easy wood tools and the D-Way beating tools. And she said she came up with the idea of making something that looked like a stack of buttons. And on this one, to answer your question, I promise I'm coming back to it. She used green, red, blue, and then she topped it with the oyster shell or something like that. And when it was all done, she put Danish oil on it. And I use, on this piece, I believe that is Liberon finishing oil. I have used, well, even on this one here, that's just walnut oil, just something to protect it. And walnut oil, they recommend any kind of wiping oil. You can put lacquers on it, you can put polys on it, anything you want, really.
Does it darken?
It does a little bit. I used walnut oil and it did amber it a little bit, but that's kind of what I was going for with this one. Now this one here, I shot clear lacquer across the top of it, just rattle can lacquer, and it worked real well.
Okay.
I think it'll hold up over time. But again, this gives you kind of an idea. This is not a dry brush. This is the same technique that I used on the tool handle, where I've got a layer of green underneath and black on top, and the top coat's going to fill the crevice, whether it be blasted, carved, whatever. It's going to fill that crevice, and then you just sand back to it. And again, I think this is the Liberon oil that I put on this one. But you can put, again, about anything. The inside, I don't even think I finished the inside. My intent was to use Yorkshire grit and Hampshire sheen on the inside. So the only thing that's got finish on it, and I finished this, I always do, I finish this before I hollow out the bowl. And then you've got the opportunity to use 2 different finishes if you choose. Okay?
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Oh, that milk paint doesn't last very long, does it? After you mix it up?
That is true. Milk paint, you should probably use it within a day or 2. I've heard people say they can make it last 4 or 5 days, but even into the second day, it gets really stiff, and you have to give it a little bit more water to liven it up, and it's okay. But I prefer to just kind of mix what I'm going to use at the moment. And you saw, you know, in that video, I actually had just a very little left. I used a teaspoon of powder and a teaspoon of water, and I on both colors, I ended up pretty heavy. That first coat was pretty thick, and then the 2 top coats were a lot thinner. But that was just about perfect for that project. And it's not super expensive if you do it that way either. How many cans of finish have we all got that we opened up and we finished 4 pieces, and then we went back to it 6 months later and it was all skinned over and it wasn't worth using? At least with the dry milk paint, you can use it as you want.
Are you limited in terms of colors or availability of the milk paint?
They have a palette. To answer your question, yes, it's limited, but if you look at the old-fashioned milk paint site and Sweet Pickens, there's just, I don't know how many colors. I think she's got something like 35 colors on the Sweet Pickens site. Everything from pinks to olive greens and everything else in between. Old-fashioned milk paint tends to be the more, well, old-fashioned look, more of a classic milk paint look. The colors aren't vibrant necessarily. They're a little more subdued colors. It makes you think of shaker boxes and things like that. But between the two, and they're made in the same place now. I mean, well, they were anyway, but since she bought old-fashioned milk paint, she's got everything right in their backyard. So she's got the whole family involved. It's really kind of a cool story. But lots of colors to choose from.
Can you mix the colors
Yes.
To get the color that you're looking for?
Absolutely. There's a palette guide on the old-fashioned milk paint site where you can get several different shades based on one color, where maybe if you start with the soldier blue and you add a little bit of oyster white, you get this. If you add the pure white, you get this. So yeah, there's a good key on that. And I don't know whether she's got that on the Sweet Pickens site, but you can certainly mix it to get what you want. The Betsy Ross platter that I did, this is actually, I believe, soldier blue and just a touch of black, because the soldier blue is pretty much the color of a Union uniform. It's a little paler than that, but you add a little bit of black to it, and it really brings out the richness in that blue. So yeah, there's all kinds of things you can do to mix them. That's not an issue at all.
Okay.
When you apply a milk paint to something that isn't sandblasted or isn't textured, do you see the grain come through?
If you mix it thin, you can, yes. A lot of what I have
like a wash?
done, yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can use it like a wash. What a lot of people will do just with a smooth bowl, and if you've ever seen an Al Steert demo, he does the square bowl, and he uses cherry, and he'll use I believe it's the black and then a little bit of green on top of it. And as he sands through, you can see a little bit of the figure, but you almost get a bronzing effect from that wood. But unless you use it as a wash, now I don't know, you can still see even though without the sandblasting, you can still see some of the figure up in here. Because when you sand it back, you're really smoothing it out. And if you've ever put milk paint on anything and tried to sand it off, it doesn't really come off. You almost have to recut. But you can get down to the point where you use sea bear wood if that's what you're going for. And that's what a lot of the shaker boxes used to be, was whether it be a milk paint or some other paint, maybe even a stain, they would polish back to get closer to the wood so you had more of that organic feel from the wood. Other questions? Okay. Well, again, I apologize for the technical error, and I hope you guys won't hold this as normal for a remote demo, because it is definitely not. Mine fell apart on you. I've not heard of any others falling apart like this one did. So I hope you won't judge other demonstrators that are using vMix by what you've experienced with me tonight. I've not had these issues yet, so I don't know. You know, when we did the test the other night, I was a little concerned about the lag, and it's not there tonight, so it had to be a software issue.
Can you show?
We'll try it again.
What kind
Show
of?
you what?
Try stretch hogging at the same time.
Say again?
We'll try one of these again. It was good.
Okay. Well, thank you. Was there a question somebody started to say?
Yes.
Can you show me?
Can you describe the device that you use to manage the cameras, to switch between the computer and the camera?
Yeah, what I'm using is a switching software called vMix, and it works just like a television studio. And normally, I'm able to run all three cameras, PowerPoint, pictures, or whatever I want seamlessly. And I use this little remote keypad, keyboard, to control that, because everything's set up on a shortcut key. So whenever I press 3, I'm going to my PowerPoint presentation. When I go 1, that's the tailstock camera. And then 2 is the headshot camera. And the overhead has bounced around on me. That was part of the problem. But normally it's bulletproof. I just proved that it doesn't always have, it's not always going to be bulletproof.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
You talked about a resource sheet.
A what?
A resource sheet?
Yes. What I'll do is I'll send that out to Mike a little bit later tonight.
Okay.
I'll go in, I'll make it a PDF, and I'll send it out to him, and you guys can distribute however you please. And
Okay.
in it will be a lot of the, I've got a lot of links to the different products that I used.
We'll probably make that available on our website so everybody can get to it.
Yeah, and I've got more on that than what I used tonight. I've got, I think I've even got the recipe for the iron acetate, which is pretty simple. You know, it's 2 parts, 1 piece of steel wool to a gallon of vinegar. It can't get much easier than that.
Easy.
Easy wood acetate, something like that. Okay.
Larry, we certainly appreciate your time, and we can blame any of the problems that we had tonight on a virus, which is, you know, creating problems for all of us. So we'll, we'll call it a great presentation. We enjoyed hearing from you and seeing new techniques like you've shown us tonight.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. I owe you guys a better demo. How about that?
We'll hold you to it.
Yeah, we'll hold you to that.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
That was good, though.
Yeah.
All right. Do you want to do anything else as far as your club meeting goes?
I think we'll call it good. I think we've all been watching the screen for long enough now, but I made the announcements before we introduced you, so I think we've gotten through that portion. Club, if you have any questions or information, you can certainly contact us through the website or contact us through our email addresses and ask. But it was fun. This is my actually fourth Zoom meeting today, so it was just kind of a long day of watching the screen.
Yeah.
But
I've been doing a lot of them too.
yeah, it was a neat way when you can't get together for all of us to get together, and I appreciate you having the resources to get us all together like that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We appreciate it, Larry. Thank you.
All righty.
Yep, thank you. That was good.
All right. Have a good evening, everyone.
Bye,
Thank you.
Larry. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.